Hi, welcome to the next training of SAP FI. Today's topic for training is SAP Currencies. In this topic, we'll take up the different currencies as per different countries for the transaction perspective and for the reporting perspective. In today's topic, we'll be covering the overview on currencies and configuration steps, which would include check currency codes, then set decimal places for currencies, define a standard quotation for exchange rates, enter prefixes, then exchange rate type to be checked, defining translation ratio, then maintaining the exchange rate, maintaining exchange rate spreads, defining the rounding rules for currencies, define work list for exchange rate entry, and then assign exchange rate to the work list. So these are the different configuration steps. So moving up to the first is the overview on currencies. Currency is the legal means of payment in any country. So it basically means that a currency is a legal means for different transactions done in any country against which you need to make payment, and the mode by which we make the payment is known as the currency. The same currency needs to be maintained in the SAP system as well. In SAP, all currencies are maintained as per the ISO. Now, the ISO basically refers to the International Organization for Standardization Standard. So in the SAP system, you can post in different currencies in one go. For each monetary amount that you enter in the SAP system, you must specify a currency. You enter currencies as the ISO standard. For example, there is USD for US dollars. Similarly, there is Euro for European Union. So similarly, there are different currencies for respective countries, or even the European Union is a particular group of countries. So similarly, different countries has got their own currency ISO standards, and those currencies needs to be maintained in the SAP system. So in the SAP system, you can post in different currencies, and as said, it is one of the legal means of payment in any country you go for. Again, in SAP, the ISO refers to the International Organization for Standardization. So this ISO has maintained a different currencies code from country to country. As for US, there is USD, US dollar. Similarly, there is yen for Japan. There is Euro for European Union. There is INR for India. Similarly, different these INR or yen or USD, these are the ISO standard, and it is always recommended that one should use the ISO standard as a code for the currencies. However, in SAP, most of the ISO standard currencies are already defined in a default SAP system. So you will, most of the cases, you will find the currencies in place, but we need to check whether those currencies are in place in the software or not. So moving up to the configuration steps. Now, as you can see on the screen, we'll move with each of the configuration steps one by one. The first is check currency codes. The currency codes, as said, are maintained in the SAP system as a default, but we need to go and we need to check whether those currencies are there in place or not. So the currency table must have entries for all currencies which are required in the company's business transaction. So for your country, for your company, what are the different currencies you deal in, what are the different currencies your business transactions take place, you need to check those currency codes are whether they've been maintained or not. If they are not maintained, we will be maintaining that, or we will be basically defining them in the SAP system. So in SAP, all currencies are defined according to the international ISO standard. As said, SAP recommends that one should use the ISO standard for your additional entries, or in case any of the currency is not maintained in the software which you found while checking the currency code, you should maintain the currency which is there in the ISO standard. So if your entries do not correspond to the ISO standard, you will not be able to use the data exchange in the international communication. So that is what the major concern, the consequences, that if you maintain a different currency code which is not with respect to that of the ISO, then you will not be able to use the data exchange in the international communication. Now, the international communication basically refers to the banking clearing transactions, the transactions which happens from one country to the another country, and for the banking transactions perspective. So that is why it is recommended you should maintain the ISO standard currency codes in the SAP system. Like if you have got USD for United States, you should maintain it as USD. Instead of, you cannot maintain anything else like XYZ. No, that will not work properly in the system, or it will work in the system but it will not work practically for the international requirements. So now let's see how these configuration is done, how we can check the currency codes. As a first configuration, you can see this step is over here on the first. Now the transaction code for that is OY03, but if you want to go with the SPRO path or the implementation guide path, the path has been maintained over here on the bottom for you. We need to go to the IMG, that is the implementation guide. Then we need to go to SAP NetWeaver, then general settings, and then currencies. So let's move on and see how we can move to this step and check the currency codes. Now, so as to move to the IMG guide, we need to go to the transaction SPRO, enter, and you can see over here SAP Reference Img. This is the IMG which refers to the implementation guide. If you click on this, it will take you to the next. It shows you the implementation guide path, as you can see on the screen. And if you search, the path is, you need to go to SAP NetWeaver. So you can search over here, there is SAP NetWeaver, and if you expand this option over here, now you can go to your general settings, and when you expand this general settings, you will find currencies. Now if I expand the currencies, you will find all the configuration which we will be covering in the today's training is been listed over here. So now we'll be moving to the first configuration, check currency codes. If you go and execute this, you can see now on the screen that there are a lot of different currencies already maintained in the SAP system, and these currencies are provided as a default by the SAP itself as per the ISO standards. So you can find the different currencies for different countries. What are the different countries has got their different currencies maintained. Like if you move down, you will find Australian, then the old and the new. If you move down further, or even if you want, you can search it for the position, and you can put USD. You will find the United States dollar, which is maintained as USD. You can see the short text, and this is the ISO code, the USD. Similarly, you can move down, you can see for different other currencies also been maintained. If you move up, these are the different currencies been maintained. Tanzania, then there is you can find Switzerland. You can find further moving up different countries. You can see the Singapore dollar has been maintained as UGT. Even if you want, you can search for euro as well. So you can go to position and you can write euro. You can see over here the euro currency is EUR, euro. That is what been maintained over here. Similarly, you can see the British pound is also been maintained as GBP as on the screen. Similarly, you can see for Hong Kong, for different countries. Similarly, the particular currencies are already maintained. So what you need to do is you need to check that what are the different currencies you would be needing while doing the business transaction in the SAP system, and are those particular currencies already in this particular list or not. Now let's take a contrary situation, that if I find something and I don't find that currency in the system, how we can maintain that currency. So to maintain the currency, we need to go to new entries. So this new entry is used to create a new currency key. So if you click onto the new entries to create a new currency on the system, so you can see now when I clicked onto the new entry, it takes you to the next screen. So what you need to do over here is you need to assign the currency key. The currency could be a 4-character, which you can have alphanumeric. So suppose I meant it as Z A B C. You can have your own code. Suppose I am taking the currency code as ZABC, and I maintain over here currency for United States, and you can also write the short text, and suppose the short text is US decimal, and then again you need to put the ISO code. So the ISO code should be the one which is actually the international code. So suppose I maintain it at USD, and then moving down we need to select the alternative key. So the alternative key is up to you whether you want to take or not. There is no list of alternative key. So if you want, you can maintain any or you can skip that. Now valid until, you can put a date up to which the particular currency will be valid. So if you want it not to maintain any limit date, you can leave it blank. So these are the parameters which you need to fill basically so as to maintain a new currency in the SAP system. Once this is done, you can move and you can click onto the save option. So you can click onto the save option over here, and once I click onto the save, you can see it's been added to the request. Continue. So you can see now the data was saved. So this is how you can create your own currency. Now we can go back, and you can find over here that the currency has been maintained as ZABC. Even if you wish, you can change this particular ISO as well, but it is recommended that you should use the ISO currency code so as to have the various benefits. Otherwise there will be consequences to it. So this is how you would be doing the first configuration of check currency codes. Now moving to the next step is set decimal places for currencies. Again the transaction code is 0y04, sorry, OY04. So even the same configuration you can find over here on the path. The very next is set decimal places for currency. So before moving, each currency has a different number of decimal places. Most of the cases you will find that the currency has got 2 decimal places, but in certain cases you will find that the currency has further got 3 decimal places as well for different transactions. So if you are adding new currencies which you do not have two decimal places, you have to enter these currencies in the menu option of decimal places. That is what we will be covering up now. So in the settings delivered with the system, the most important currencies which do not have two decimal places are preset according to the ISO standards. So in this, what we will be doing is we'll check whether in your company currencies are in use which do not have two decimal places in addition to those delivered, and then set the appropriate number of decimal places for each currencies. So let's see how we can do that. If we move on to this particular config and click on to the execute, and you can see now there is a caution message that the table is a cross client. So you need to be very much careful while making any changes. It will have its consequences or the impact on the whole client. Enter. Now again it gives you a warning message. It says in a productive system you must not delete the currencies in use or change the decimal places. This could make amounts in documents already posted incorrect or invalid. So you have to be very much careful that this steps must not be followed in a production system, that means in a live system, as it will have consequences. Now moving to continue. So again it says the warning message details. You can read that message over here. And do you want to change the decimal places despite all recommendations? And you can click yes. And you can find on the screen that there are certain currencies which has been maintained with 3 digit or 3 decimal places. So what happen is, normally by default the system takes 2 decimal places, but in case for any currencies you need 3 decimal places to be maintained for transactions to be posted for reporting and all, so you can go and you can maintain the decimal places 3 or 4 or 5 for depending upon how many decimal places you need, and accordingly that can be maintained over here. So if you move down, you can, there is no USD, we don't need the USD. If you want to add any, you can go to new entries over here, and then you can take the, you can search for the any other currency which you need to be extended with 3 or 4 or 5. So suppose I take it as the one which I have maintained, ZABC, and I select that over here, and I maintain the decimal over here as 3. So in this case it will take 3 decimal places. Even if you want, you can maintain 5, and in that case system will take 5 decimal places for transactions in the currencies. So it's up to the requirement how you wish to have it, and then you can move and you can save this screen. So you can see now it's been, and it asks you the request number, so you can save the config in these steps. Okay, so that is what you need to do in this, and once you are saved with this particular request, the configurations will be completed. So saved. So as you can see, the data was saved. So that is what you need to do over here in this step. But mind it, this is a step which can only be done in before going live, or you should not make any changes with respect to the currencies in a live system. Now moving to the third configuration step is define standard quotation for exchange rates. The transaction is ONOT, and if you move with the path, you will find the path very next over here with the previous one, set decimal places. The next is define a standard quotation for exchange rates. Now if we talk about this particular step, for each currency pair you need to define either the direct quotation or the indirect quotation as the standard quotation for exchange rate. So over here the standard quotation basically refers to the direct and the indirect quotations which need to be maintained in the SAP system. So this setting is used for basically for two purposes. One is when you process the exchange rate tables, you can enter the exchange rate either as a direct or indirect quotation. If the exchange rate you enter does not have the same quotation as the standard quotations set up, so the system take that as a direct and indirect part and it does the calculations. So an exchange rate is only taken from exchange rate table if it has already given by this user. So if you have already maintained the exchange rate in the system picks it up from the exchange rate tables which has been maintained by the user. If this is a type of exchange rate that demands translation using a reference currency, the standard quotation is used to be determined for further processing. So what basically a defined standard quotation works is it will help us in exchanging in what you basically can say is in exchanging or in determining the translation value from one currency to the another currency depending as the direct or the indirect quotation part. So if you move on to this step and we execute this step over here, you can find over here on the screen that there are different currencies from and to been maintained with direct quotations. So there are certain already defined as a default SAP system part which you can figure it out in the SAP system. You can see that from euro to USD direct quotation is already maintained. Similarly from USD to euro the indirect is also been maintained. So the one which are very common are already defined as default quotations in the system. But if you need to maintain one for your requirement, you can go and you can maintain it as well. So suppose I maintain a new one, like for new from USD to, suppose I take it as INR, and from when you want this particular quotations to be valid you can put the date. Suppose I take the date as April 1st 2015 and I take it as direct quotation. Similarly I can go and I can maintain the indirect as well. So similarly you can maintain USD to INR as indirect as well, as you wish. So once this exchange rate is maintained you can go and you can save this screen. Okay, it says that an entry already exists in the same with the same key, so the exchange rate is already maintained. So let's see with INR to USD. And similarly the another way is already maintained, so we can go for INR to USD. Okay, that means it's not required, it's already maintained. So the indirect is already maintained, we don't need that. You can leave it the from blank and you can take INR as 2. So this is how we have maintained the quotations over here, the INR to USD as a direct quotation, and then one is the indirect quotation for the INR part. So once this has been maintained you can go and you can save the screen and it's been done. So this is how you need to go and you need to do this steps, you need to do this config for the standard one. However, this is not required, this is an optional part. You don't need to do it because the system in most cases already have the default settings for the currencies in the system. But just for your reference I just got it one done for you. Now moving to the next is enter prefix for direct and indirect exchange rates. So exchange rates can be entered as a direct or indirect quotation as discussed in the last step. Here you can maintain two prefixes that can be used to differentiate between direct and indirect quotation exchange rates during input and output. So in this case, we need to maintain the prefixes for direct and indirect part. Now you can see over here when I executed this step, as of now it's blank. However, the recommendation is direct quotation we will be leaving it blank, and for the indirect one we will be taking as a prefix as slash. So let's see how we can do that. We need to go to the new entries, and in that we need to leave the direct quotation, the D part, the first column as blank, which will work as a direct quotation. And for the indirect quotation we need to maintain slash. The prefix means that you can enter the exchange rate without a prefix over here, the first D part. It basically refers as blank, blank as a prefix for direct quotation and slash for the indirect quotations. So like for an example, if your local currency is Euro, EUR, you enter a business transaction in the transaction currency USD. Slash has been defined as the indirect prefix or the indirect quotation prefix, and blank is for the direct quotation. That means for the direct quotation you don't need to maintain any prefix. You can then either enter the exchange rate as a direct quotation without a prefix, or as an indirect quotation with the prefix, which we will see in the next coming steps. So in this particular step you don't need to do much. You need to leave the direct quotation as blank, and you need to maintain the indirect quotation as slash. Now you can go and you can save this screen, continue, and the configuration is done. So this is how we have covered with this particular step as well, that is enter prefix for direct and indirect quotation exchange rates. Now moving to the next is check exchange rate types. So as you can see on the screen, the very next step is check exchange rate types. Exchange rates for different purposes for the same date are defined in the system as exchange rate types. You cannot delete the existing entries, and you must not delete the existing entries. If we move on to this step, let's execute this step, and you can find the different exchange rate types maintained already in the system. So you can see the different list of different currency translation exchange rate types in the system. The most commonly used in these are B, G, and M. So these are basically the standard provided by SAP, where B represents for bank selling rate for currencies, G represents for bank buying rate, whereas M represents the bank average rate of currencies. So if you need to carry out currency transactions between number of different currencies, you can simplify exchange rate maintenance by entering a base currency for the exchange rate type. So what rate you want to be applicable for the currency buying, for currency selling, you can maintain those different rates, and accordingly those different rates will be picked up by the system. And if you have not maintained any of them, you must need to maintain the average rate for the currency, that is M. So now let's see how that can be done. As you can see, this is just for your knowledge, and you did not need to do anything in this particular configuration step of exchange rate type, because the buying, selling and the average currency rate is type is already maintained in the system. So this is just the optional configuration for your knowledge perspective. It's been taken up as a step. These are the three which you need to follow. B refers to the currency selling rate, G refers to the currency buying rate, and M refers to the currency average rate. So these are applicable in every companies which are having different currency transactions with the rest of the different other currencies for their business part. So this is about the particular configuration of check exchange rate type. So that is what we have checked, those different exchange rate types maintained, B, G and M. Now we'll be moving up to the next is define translation ratios for currency translation. Here we need to enter the translation ratio for the currency translation. You enter these ratios for each exchange rate type and currency pair. How that can be done? Let's see. So you can see on the screen, define translation ratio for currency translation. We can execute this step, and now the system asks you, do you want to continue? Yes. And now you can see on the screen that you need to maintain the ratio from one currency to the another currency. It could be 1:1, it could be 1:10, depending upon currency to currency. So you also specify whether you want to use an alternative exchange rate over here as well for specific currency pairs. Like for example, in 1999 the exchange rate for DEM, that is the German mark, to France currency FRF will be calculated via euro. So to translate those things, you can put the date valid from, you can put the exchange, the ratio of 1:1, and suppose you want to calculate the value via euro. So in that case you can maintain over here DEM, then FRF. Let's do it once. Go to new entries. You can maintain the exchange transactions type over here, the one which we just discussed. M refers to the average currency rate. You can put the from and to currency, like I have taken DEM for German mark currency, and FRF for is the France currency. You can put the valid from date over here. Suppose I take the valid date as 1/1/99, and I take the ratio from and to as 1:1. But now I want the calculation of German to France currency valuations via euro as a medium. So if you need any alternative type, you can maintain that over here on the basis of which you are going to translate. So over here you can maintain euro. So this has been used as a translation from one currency to another currency in case when the two currencies doesn't have, there are certain concerns with relation to conversion. So similarly we used to do that in case there is a need of a requirement to use an alternative currency for transferring the amount from one to the another currency. So this is how you can maintain that. So before the Eurozone all came up, earlier the German and the France currency were there, but once the euro came up, these currencies have gone off and the euro has been used. So that is why from German to France, euro can be used as a medium of conversion. So that is why SAP has provided you an alternate exchange rate transaction type, that is you can maintain over here. So this is how you can maintain the things, and once that has been done, you can go and you can save this screen. So this is how you can maintain the ratios from one currency to the another currency. And if you want a third currency in between for the calculation perspective, you can use that as an alternative exchange rate type, which has been defined over here. So euro has been used so as to convert the German currency to the French currency as a mediator, as you would be knowing that the German and the French has came up as an European Union part along back. So the euro is started been using in that particular European Union group. So that is all about this. Now if you move back again, you can see on the screen that most of the cases you will find that the currencies have been maintained as 1:1, and in most of the cases you will find that the ratios between one currency to another currency remains 1:1, whether it could be euro to USD, whether it is yen to USD, or any other different currencies you can take it up for. So if you want further to maintain more of the currencies, again you can go to new entry. So you have to take care that the exchange rate type basically should be either G, that is the buying currency rate we just discussed in the last step, B for selling the currency rates, and M as the average rate. So if you are not interested in maintaining the buying or the selling rate, you at least have to maintain the medium or the average rate at least. So you can maintain, suppose I am taking up that INR to USD, and again you can take the date from when it will be applicable, that is it, and you can go and you can save this screen and it will be saved. So you can see now the data was saved. Similarly, if you want that the average rate, the buying rate should also be maintained, you can maintain the buying rate as well over here on the screen. So as you can see on the screen that you can maintain the M for the average, G for the buying currency rate, and B for the currency selling rate from one currency to the another currency, and the valid date from when these particular ratios will become applicable. So once you have maintained these different, similarly, and you can go and you can save the screen and your ratios will be maintained in the system. So this is how you need to maintain the currency ratios from one currency to another currency, and in most of the cases you will find that the ratio always remains 1:1. As you can see on the screen, number of different currencies already defined as provided by the default system. So this is how you would be doing it. That is about all about the translation ratios used for different currency translation. Now we'll be moving to the next step, is enter exchange rates. Now this is an important step for which is used in the day-to-day business part for maintaining the exchange rate within the SAP system. So we'll be seeing what it is all about. So this exchange rate is something where we need to maintain the exchange rate value. What is the everyday changing exchange rate or the foreign currency values of dollar against euro, or dollar against yen, depending upon companies to companies accordingly. So the exchange rates are required to translate the foreign currency amounts when posting or clearing the transactions. So you need the foreign exchange rates to be maintained in the system on the day-to-day basis or on the basis of a period. It could be a month, it could be a day, it could be a weekly, it could be fortnightly, depending upon the country to the companies to companies. Like for example, if it is a financial institution, in those cases the exchange rate are maintained every day, because every day the foreign exchange rates for different currencies keep on changing, and on the basis of those different exchange rate on the daily basis, the business transactions take place in the normal environment. So those exchange rate need to be maintained into the SAP system. The another part is we need to determine the gain and loss from exchange rate differences. So you need to maintain the exchange rate so as to know what is the gain or loss from foreign exchange transactions. So there could be an agreement date when the rate of a certain currency was something else, but when the payment date arrived, the rate have changed to something else. Now the rate could change from on the higher side, or it could go on the downer side as well. So you can have a gain or a loss on that particular exchange currency. So you need to know what is the gain or loss from the exchange of currencies actually happened. Another is to evaluate the open items in foreign currency and the foreign currency balance sheet accounts. So you need to maintain the exchange rate for these purposes. Now let's see in the SAP system how you can maintain those exchange rate. As you can see on your screen, so there are different exchange rates already defined, but you don't need to go for and have to look for them. Now whatever your currency is, and with the another currency you are going to do the transaction, you need to maintain the rate of them every day basis or a monthly basis, depending upon the company to company. So the system what does is it uses the transaction type M. As you can see, M exchange rate for foreign currency translation when posting or clearing document. So as a default system, M is something which you need to maintain. M is the exchange rate, the medium, the average exchange rate value which you need to maintain. If you want to maintain it, you can go to new entry, or even if you want, you can copy any of them from over here. Suppose in case I go to position and I search the M part, and suppose I want to maintain the exchange rate for from USD to Euro, enter, and you can find that USD to Euro is there in the screen. But now the exchange rate this has been maintained is on 662011. Now I want to maintain the date exchange rate as of today date. So what you can do is you can copy this over here, change your date. Suppose I change the date as 6/6/2015, and as of today the rate of dollar is 1.01, and now you can enter and you will see the rate has been maintained over here. So now the date has changed. So whatever the different transactions that will take place from 6/6/2015, the system will automatically takes the euro rate against the dollar as 1.01. So it will overrule the previous rate which has been maintained with the current rate which is maintained in the system. But if you move back and you do any transaction in the year 2013 or 2014, it will pick up the previous rate which has been maintained, that is 1.1111. So you need to maintain this exchange rate over here on the screen. Even if it exists, the date will always vary. So you can copy the one which is already existing, and then you can go back and you can change the date, because that is what is the most important part. So an entry must exist in the system for this particular exchange rate type M, as the system will pick this particular rate for every transactions of dollar to euro. So and this particular rate which you are maintaining over here is applicable for all the company code within your client. It is not company code specific, it is a client specific. So whatever the rate you are maintaining of dollar to euro from 6/6/2015 will become applicable for all the company codes. So this is how you need to maintain it, and once you have maintained, you can go and you can save this screen. So you can see now this is the direct quotation which we have maintained. And on the other side, if you want to do the reverse in or indirect quotation, you can even put the indirect quotation value as well. But in most of the cases, we take the direct quotation and the system automatically calculate the indirect quotation for that. So you need to maintain the value over here in this particular format for the exchange rate to be maintained, and this is the exchange rate which should be maintained on day-to-day basis or month-to-month basis, depending upon the client to client. So this is about the entering the exchange rate, that which we have covered. Now we'll be moving to the next is maintain exchange rate spread. Now in this activity, you can derive the bank buying rate or the bank selling rate using the average rate and the spread. By spread we mean the difference between the average and the buying rate, or the difference between the average and the selling rate. That is what basically spread refers to. You convert to the buying or the selling rate by first determining the average rate and then adding or subtracting the spread from that average rate. Like for example, if the average rate between dollar and euro is 1.46 and the spread is 0.004, the bank buying rate derived will be 1.46, that is the average rate minus this spread. So it will become 1.456. So what happens is the buying rate is determined as the average rate subtracted the spread. So on the other side, for the selling, the average rate is added with this spread. So to make that calculation, you must make the following entries into the SAP system. Then only the system will be able to decide what will be the buying rate of the currency on the basis of the average rate and the spread, and what will be the selling rate. So how we can do that? Let's see. So the next step, maintain exchange rate spreads. You can click onto it, and now you can see the rate is blank. So as of now it's showing blank, but in case you want to maintain, you can maintain it. It is an optional configuration step, but maybe at times somebody would be needing it, then you can go and you can maintain that particular configuration over here. So if you go to new entries, now you need to take the exchange rate type over here. The exchange rate type, that is M, the average rate. Then you need to take the from and to currency. Suppose I take the from and to currency over here as USD to Euro, and the valid from date you can put it over here. Suppose I took this, and I am maintaining the spread over here as 0.004. Enter. So you can see this rate has been taken, the ratio has been taken by the system already itself. So as we maintain the spread, this spread is used for calculating the buying currency rate and the selling currency rate from the average currency rate which will be maintained for this. As said in the example, this particular spread 0.004 will be subtracted from the average rate so as to get the buying rate, and on the other side it will be added to the average rate so as to get the selling rate of the currency, that is euro against the dollar. So if you want to derive the buying and the selling currency rates on the basis of the average currency rate and the difference, in that case you can go and you can maintain the spread over here so as to get the details, so as to get the buying and the selling rate. However, if you don't want to go for that, you can skip this particular step as this will not be required. So both the options have been given in the SAP system to you. Either you can take the average rate as the buying and the selling rate, or if you want to derive the buying and the selling rate from the average rate on the basis of the difference, you can again go and have that from the system. So to conclude, in this particular step you can have the buying or the selling rate determining from the average rate by adding or subtracting the spread from that of the average rate respectively. So that is about how you can maintain the spread for currency so as to deriving the buying and the selling rate. You can click onto the save option and it will be saved to the request number. So this is about how we can maintain the exchange rate spread with the path as well as with the transaction OBD6. Now we'll be moving to the next is defining the rounding rules for currencies. Now this may be an optional step which may be needed at your end or it may not be needed at your end, depends upon the requirement of the business of the client. So in this case, if you want the currency to be rounded off to the nearest cent or nearest pice or nearest rupee, you can apply the rule for the currency for rounding off in it. So for the company code or the currency combination for which payments are to be made not in small denominations but in multiples of it. In that case, you can enter the currency unit as rounding unit to which amounts are to be rounded off. Let's see in the SAP system how that can be done. So moving to the path, you need to go to SPRO, enter IMG, then SAP NetWeaver, general currencies, and in general settings you will find currencies over here. So we are at this particular step, define rounding rules for currencies. You can click on to execute and you can see over here the company code is there followed by the currency, and the rounding unit is also been defined, has been reflected to you. So this ensures that the amount in this currency are always rounded to this unit. That means it will be rounded to the 5th digit. The payment program evaluates your entries to determine the cash discount and round offs the amount accordingly in the SAP system. So if you define the rule over here, if you define the rounding off rule over here, the system will calculate this rounding rule while making payments for and taking the cash discount and over there for the rounding part. How that can be done? Like if you want to add your company, you can go to new entries, you can take the company code, you can take the currency, suppose I take the dollar, US dollar, and I want to round it off to the nearest 4, and you can maintain that and you can enter and save the screen. So in this way you can round off the currency to the nearest unit to which you want to round off to. So this is basically an optional step which is not been done usually, but just for the knowledge perspective you should be knowing how a rounding off of the currency unit can be done in the SAP system. So this is about it. Save it, and this particular step of maintaining the rounding rule has been done. There is nothing much to be done in this. It's a very simple step. You just need to take the company code which to be with the currency which it will be used for, and need to assign the rounding unit part. Now moving up to the next step is define work list for exchange rate entry. Now in this particular step we create a work list for entry and editing of exchange rates. Users receive authorizations to enter exchange rates at the work list level. It is possible for two or more users to edit two or more work lists in parallel, as the lock applies at the work list level during the editing. So what happened in this case is the SAP provides you the functionality of editing the exchange rate by the users, and even in that by multiple users, which was not been available in the earlier version of SAP system. So in this case the user can change the exchange rates in the work list, and accordingly they can go and post a transaction in the SAP system for the respective currency exchange rate. So in this case you can assign each combination of exchange rate type from and to currencies to one work list only. So this is just an added functionality within the currency part, where the changes in the currencies are allowed at the user end as well. So how that can be done, let's see in the system. So as you can see the path is similar. You need to go to SAP NetWeaver, then to general settings, currencies, and within that you will find define work list for exchange rate entry. Now in this case if we go and execute this step, it will take you to the next screen, as you can see on the screen. Now the screen is blank as of now. Now to maintain, you need to go to click on new entries, and as I clicked, the fields will become open to you, so as you can maintain those things over here on the screen. Now you can create the work list. So suppose I create a work list, for example US underscore 1000. You can put the text over here as well. Exchange rate G, that is for the buying rate. Here you can maintain the maintenance installment. So whether you want to make the changes daily, you want to make the changes weekly or monthly. Suppose I take it as on the daily basis. So that is what been taken. And you can maintain the tolerance percentage. So the tolerance percentage will allow you to post the currency transactions, whatever will be maintained up to that tolerance on the upper and the lower part. So suppose I maintain the tolerance over here as 5. This is what you need to do. You need to maintain. Now this particular part is very important to be maintained over here. So you need to take care of that the currency work list has been taken, and then it has to be maintained on the daily basis or weekly basis or monthly basis. It may vary from client to client, company to company, whether they want it on the daily basis or they want it on the weekly or monthly basis. And then you need to maintain the tolerance on the upper side. The tolerance will basically help you in, it will provide you the upper and the lower bracket with that particular currency, and it will allow you to post with the margin of 5% on the upside and the margin of 5% on the lower side. So if you move, now we can go and we can save the work list, create it, clicked onto the save option, and you can see now the system will ask you to save it in the request, continue or enter. So the data has been saved. So in this way you can create a work list of your own. This work list will help you in editing of exchange rates. The user will receive authorizations for this, and they can make editing in the exchange rate as they wish to. Now let's move on to the next transaction, that is assigning the exchange rate. The next is assign the exchange rate to the work list. Now here we will be assigning the exchange rate to a work list. How we can do that? Let's see. We can move with the SPRO path again, back once more, and now we are back to the path, and the next step is assign exchange rate to the work list. We can go and we can execute the work list, assign exchange rate to the work list over here, and you can see the screen is blank. So over here you can assign all the exchange rate to a work list. So whatever the work list we have created just in the last step, you can assign all the different exchange rates over here to that particular work list that are to be entered at the same intervals and linked to the same authorizations. How we can maintain that? Let's see. We need to go to new entries. Now suppose I want to maintain the exchange rate for average exchange rate for suppose USD to INR. You can name the work list which you want to name it as. Now I would be taking it the same as I have defined in the last step, underscore 1000, and the quotation you need to decide. So the quotation I am taking up is direct quotation. Similarly, you can maintain more of the exchange which you want to go for. Suppose I take USD to again Euro, and again the work list will remain the same. So in the same work list you can define number of exchange rates which we will be using for conversion perspective. Further, if you wish, you can maintain more of such kinds, like suppose I take it further to yen US work list US 1000, and then again direct quotation. So in this way you can maintain the different exchange rates which need to be maintained for that particular wick list. So that particular wick, the work list will contain these all different exchange which will be helped for maintaining the values and transmitting it. So now you have entered these either directly in the productive system, or you can even use it in the, and you can raise the request and move it to the production system. So once you have maintained this, you can go and you can save the particular setting over here. As you can see, clicked onto the save. Okay, it asks you that yen is not there. So instead of yen, we can take any other different currency for conversion. So let's see what different currency we can take up. Let's we take it as the Canadian dollar, CAD, and now we can enter, and now we can save this particular part. So the changes have been done. You can see the data was saved. So in this way you can maintain the currency rates within the work list. The same work list needs to be maintained for all of these, as you can see on the screen. Once this has been done, this is how you can create the work list. So this is the another part, and then finally this work list is assigned to the user, and the user has been given the authorization for this particular work list, which helps them to do the changes in the exchange rate as per their requirement on the daily basis or weekly basis as they are required for, and accordingly they can post the transactions in the SAP system. So this is about the work list, how the work list is created, and how that particular work list works within the currencies part. So this is how we have covered the basic currencies configuration. That is it. Now there is certain advanced options over here as well, that is expiring currencies. This advanced option is rarely used in the system. You will rarely find anywhere in the clients which have been using this advanced steps of expiring the currencies. Expiring currencies is one of the new functions within the SAP system. You can use this new function to allow currencies to expire. This means that you can attach warning or error messages to the creation or change of objects in the currencies expiring. You can put a timeline that when you want a particular currency to expire along with the reasons why it need to be expired. Like for example, the currencies participating in the European Union at the time when the European Union was been developed and many nations joined into that. At that time, there was a validity period when all their respective nations' currency will be expired and the European Union euro currency will be taken over. So at that particular time, then to lose the validity, their particular currency's validity after the end of the dual currency phase. So when the European Monetary Union was developed, was been made, at that time there was a validity period when the respective countries' currencies will be expired. So this particular concept is been developed from there, where you can put the currency's expiring date, and after that particular currencies will be expired and will not be used anymore. For longer running objects such as sales order, you can order or you can enter a date for a warning or an error message. So even if you have decided a date, you can decide two different things. You can start the system, SAP system can start giving you the warning messages that this particular currency is expiring by so and so date, and once a particular deadline date is expired, the system will start giving error messages to you. So in this way, you can ensure that on and after the end of the dual currency phase, which was there in the European Monetary Union when it was developed, these objects can no longer be created or changed in the currency that is being discontinued. So this function can also be used to discontinue currencies of countries where there is high inflation. So this concept is used where when a currency is overtaken by another currency, or a currency or a nation get merged with another union, and those kind of a scenario like the European Union development time was happened. So now let's see how these expiring currencies happen within the SAP system. So going into the SAP system now, you can see the currencies, the same steps are there in it, and at the end you will find a new tab that is expiring currencies. Now if you go and expand this particular expiring currency, you will find number of options within that. The one is define expiry reason. So in this page, in this particular part, you need to define the expiry reason for the currency that you want to allow to expire. So we will not be configuring each of these parts because these are rarely used in any SAP system or any such environment. So we'll be just giving an overview. You can go to this and you can define your own expiry reason. You can execute this step. Like you can see over here, there is one reason already defined, that is euro. So if any currency is expiring, you can give the reason as euro. That means that particular old currency is now going to the euro currency or European Monetary Union part. So similarly, you can define your own reason as this is up to you. Like if you take for an example of European Monetary Union, the Austrian shilling loses its validity at the end of the dual currency phase. You want to prevent the objects in this currency being created or changed within the SAP system after the end of dual currency phase, like in Austrian. So you can assign this expiry reason to participating currencies in the next IMG screen. So the Austrian currency loses its validity at the end of the dual currency phase. You want to prevent any object in this currency being created or changed leading up to or after the closure of the dual currency phase. So what you can do is you can define the reason. So in the first step of defining expiry reason, you need to define the reason for why you need to expire that particular currency. Moving on to the second one is define expiring currencies. So in this step, you assign the expiring currencies an expiring reason as defined in the earlier step. So what reason you have defined in the expiry reason, you need to assign that expiry reason to the currency you are expiring. So if you go over here in this particular step, you can see over here these are the various currencies which were being merged within the European Union. So these all different currencies have been assigned with a reason, and that is euro, which we have just seen in the earlier step. So the reason needs to be assigned, and now one more thing need to be done is that the new currency is to be replaced with the expiring currency as well. So you can see now in the third column, the old currency now has been replaced over here with the new currency. So within this step of expiring currencies, you just need to go to new entries. You need to assign your old currency which is expiring, and you need to give the reason for the expiry, and then you need to give the new currency will be overtaking the old currency in the system. So that is what has been done in defining the expiry currency part. It's a very simple step. Now moving next to is define warning and error dates. So once you know that a particular currency is expiring, what you would be looking forward is you would be that people should know that when it has been expiring, how the people can become active, that they have not to use this old currency anymore. So what you can do is you can put warning messages in the system. So whenever they are using those particular currencies, the system will be giving in warnings to them in the system, and after a cutoff date is decided for the currency, it will start giving error messages to it. So you can enter a date for a warning or an error message for each link between the expiry reason and the object type. You have to take care that the warning date should be earlier than the error date. The warning date cannot be later than the earlier date. So if you go to this step and execute define the warning and the error messages, you can see the reason euro is there, and you can give the warning date. After that date till the error message, the system will keep on giving the warnings to the users whenever they will be using these old currencies which are about to expire. So if you wish, you can have the warning date, that is an optional step for you. And on the another side, you can see the error from. Error from means the date from which you have decided that that particular currency, the old expiring currency, will not be used in the system. Then in those cases you need to put the date, and the system will start giving the errors. So as according to the requirements, suppose I take the warning messages as to be January 1st 2002, and it's been decided that at least 6 months will be given for the old currencies to be replaced with the new one. So a 6-month period has been given for converting all those currencies with the new currency. So the warning message has been set up as 01/01/2002, and the error messages has been taken up as June 30th 2002 for the object type made available by SAP. For company code dependent object, you can restrict the check by the company code. So in that case, you can see over here, in case you want this to be applicable for a particular company code, in that case you can assign the company code over here as well. So when a user then wants to create or change an object in the ATS or over here in the system from 1/1/2002, a warning message will be reflected to him, and from June 30th, 2002, an error message will appear for the assigned object types and the company code. So this is what the warning and the error messages date is all about. So you can enter on it. Okay, uh, the date format is somewhere wrong. That's why it's been giving an error. Okay, entered, saved, continue. So this is how you would be doing these three first steps, simple steps. Now once you have done these, in case you are interested for giving them the authorizations and all, so in that case you can move up to the next step of special authorization for expiring currencies. So it may be that a particular respective person or a particular person has been given the responsibility to take care of that particular currency which is expiring, and he would be allowed with the authorizations only to make changes to that particular expiring currencies. And for that, this fourth step has been used, and you can execute that step over here. So in that case, over here in this screen, you can go to new entries, you can add the reason, you can add the company code, then you can add the user ID, which will be authorized for all the exceptions to be done. So these particular authorizations are given to someone who is actually responsible. So you can select the reason. Let's see. So the reason is there. You can select the reason. Then you can select the company code, and if you are not interested for the company code, it is applicable for the whole company, for the whole client. You can select the user over here. Then suppose I take the user as suppose select the user from the list. So you can see there are a lot of different users. You can select the user. Suppose I take it over here as division SVP and then valid 2. So you can also put a date till what date this authorization will be valid to this particular user or to the particular user ID. So similarly you can do that, and then you can save the screen. Okay, it asks you for the date. So suppose I put the date over here as 6/30/2015. Enter, and you can put the date and then save it, and it will be saved. So similarly you can also create, you can see now that the reason has been the exception has been added, and the authorization is provided only to this user ID. So you can move back. So these are some of the basic steps which these are the steps used for expiring the currencies, where you need to define your own reasons. You need to assign those reasons to the expiring currencies, because the expiring currencies is something which may be different. It may is something which is not known, and then you can put the warning and the error dates to those particular expiring currencies or to the reason, and special authorizations can be also taken up in those particular case. So these are the basic 4 steps within the expiring currency which you need to take care of, and that is it. That is all about the expiring currency part. So this is what you need to go through in the currencies. So we have already covered how you need to check the whether that particular currency is there within the particular client or the SAP system or not, and then you need to check a lot of different things like prefix, direct, indirect quotations. The spreads needs to be maintained, the translation ratio needs to be maintained, and once these all settings are done, you need to go and have to maintain the exchange rate. You need to take care that the exchange rate is a day-to-day uh, you need to keep on changing those in day to day, depending upon the kind of business you have. It may be changed every day, it can be changed within a week or a month to month basis as well, depending upon the kind of a business or you are you are in. And then moving down, in case your currency is expiring or has been getting replaced with some other currencies, then in that case the concept of expiring currencies is used. So this is all about the currencies that we have covered, and that is all. You can go through, you can practice it again at your end, and once you have done this, you can post transactions in the SAP system, and you can see how the transactions are posted and the values are updated with the various foreign currencies within the SAP system. So that is all about the currencies. We'll see you with the new topic very soon. Thank you.